Active weather out in the Atlantic with Hurricane Erin still churning and getting closer to the U.S. mainland. And we've got a big pattern change over the lower 48 over the next couple of days. Some of you that have been just baking in the heat, some welcome news to tell you about. We'll do it in the forecast here for this August 19th, 2025 on a Tuesday. I'm meteorologist Marcus Bailey. Good to be with you as we roll along. Let's start with Erin right now. The midday update, pretty strong category 2. This system has weakened significantly over the last 24 hours. Doesn't have the high organization that it did, or at least it once did, over the last couple of days. Once was a beast of a storm, a category 5 storm. And again, the first hurricane of the Atlantic season, where things are already kind of getting busy a little bit. I do want to show you the track that we are looking at over the coming days. Not much change in the track here. Likely will hold as a category 2. I don't know if we're going to see new intensification here with this storm. It's probably going to hold steady as a category 2, probably a strong category 2 over the next several days. In fact, if we look at the trajectory of where we're going, these are some of the model trends. And you can see it kind of hugs, the average kind of hugs on that line, right? Some are going a little above, some are going a little bit below, but squarely puts it in that category 2 range here, really through the rest of this week. And then the trend has been gradually to weaken into a category 1 storm by the weekend, and then eventually as a tropical storm early next week. All right. So let me go back to the track. It does keep this over the Atlantic. It does not make landfall in the United States, but it doesn't. That still doesn't mean that we're not looking at the potential for possibly some new issues along the coast in terms of wave height and in terms of some rip currents, which has already been an issue. Had a story earlier today that there's been numerous people that have already been rescued because of pretty nasty rip currents down on the Atlantic. So if you're in these areas, please, please, please be careful here. We already do have some watches and warnings as it pertains to tropical storm warnings down along the coast of the Carolinas, specifically North Carolina and into southern Virginia. So you're talking about the Outer Banks here. It stretches all the way up into Virginia Beach. Okay. And again, this is not going to make landfall, but I will show you exactly where the problem is when it comes to why these have been issued. Okay. This is the forecast wave height and direction. Obviously, you can pick out the direction by the arrows. And then the height, I'll kind of guide you through this because I have it kind of trimmed off a little bit here. But the greens are anywhere between 7 to 9, basically. 7 to 9 feet. This is in feet. And I'm going to go progressing through the rest of Tuesday. This is in Wednesday morning. The yellow range is between 10 to 14 feet. All right, so that's just off the coast of the Carolinas. I think the concern here is going to come Wednesday. You really start to see not only that 10 to 15 or 10 to 14 range kind of snuggling in into North Carolina, but now you're in danger of possibly getting into the 14 to 18 range. And if that red kind of hugs the Outer Banks, which it's close, you're talking somewhere around 18 to 20 plus feet. Okay. And that's where kind of the concern is going to be. You're going to have some really nasty chop. It kind of just hovers over the Outer Banks. And that certainly could even hug into portions of Virginia, around Virginia Beach, where you're maybe 14 to 16. And then this is taking us into Thursday. So I think that's an all-day thing on Wednesday. And then Thursday evening, that's 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Now you're starting to see those waves starting to pull away a little bit. at least the high ones. So that is the concern locally when it comes to Erin. For the U.S. mainland, it's not going to be a direct impact, but obviously is still going to have some tremendous issues along the Carolina, especially North Carolina and then into southern Virginia. So if you're in those areas, you're on the beach, you may have vacation out there, please be aware of that and take any of those warnings and official warnings coming from some of the municipalities seriously over the next couple of days. All right, closer to home in the lower 48 states here. Hazards, not a lot going on right now. There are some flood watches and warnings out in the Central Plains, northern Texas, central Oklahoma, Oklahoma City included in that. Heat has really been driven back, at least the intense heat out in the desert Southwest. It actually kind of expands the Pacific Northwest as well. Numerous heat advisories and excessive heat warnings, or extreme heat warnings, I should say. That's been changed. Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, and Arizona. We're also dealing with some pretty intense heat around Maine. Okay? So those are the kind of extreme areas that we're looking at here. Severe weather threats for your Tuesday in through the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Western Kentucky, Southern Illinois, and then it kind of stretches back into the Central Plains here. Let's walk you through kind of what we're looking at in the Midwest here. Probably as you're going to get essentially a cold front that's going to be diving through, and you'll likely see some new development by the mid to late afternoon hours around central Indiana. This is at 4 o'clock, and you can definitely see a pretty decent cluster riding through and then starting to kind of bow out a little bit before it races down to the Ohio River by around 8 o'clock at night. Severe weather threat would likely be over for Indiana by that point. Same thing for Illinois, although they've already had a few severe thunderstorm warnings from earlier on this morning in eastern Illinois. So it was already pretty active there. In terms of the west of that area, we can kind of look at Missouri. Again, probably looking at some of these clusters firing here through around Tuesday evening. That's at 6 o'clock. And likely waning in southern Missouri by late night. These are all going to be fueled by daytime heating. Yes, there's a cold front moving through, but shouldn't really create significant issues across much of the area. In terms of the severe weather risks, again, you're looking at probably a wind threat, and a pretty low-end wind threat at that. So 60-mile-per-hour winds are possible, but as I turn on the tornado and hail threat, it is an extremely low, if at all, risk. So we're not overly concerned with anything outside of a damaging straight-line wind component. Day 2 threat basically confined into northern portions of North Dakota, where you could have some damaging winds. You could have some larger hail as well. No real tornado risk. It's just mainly a 5% chance for some gusty winds. And then the day 3 outlook is also kind of in that same area, but a little more expanded, where you could have about a 5% chance for severe weather in the eastern Dakotas and western parts of Minnesota. But overall, we're starting to see a bit more of a quiet weather pattern across the United States. Let's go ahead and look at the model trends here. And again, showing that cold front that's diving in across the Midwest. That is going to clear. And that cold front will actually usher in a much more cool pattern for parts of the Midwest that have been baking for the last several days. That rain then will kind of slide down toward the Gulf Coast states, and you can see Erin kind of hugging the coast of the Carolinas and into Virginia. This would take us through Thursday. Some of our severe weather risks up in the Dakotas, but outside of that, some showers along the Gulf Coast, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, parts of Florida. Much of the United States is extremely quiet for Thursday and then heading into Friday. Probably some increased rain chances along the Gulf Coast as we head into Friday afternoon. Your pattern's going to be a little bit more unsettled. That's typical for this time of year. We'll also have some scattered showers leading into the weekend up in Michigan. That is another cold front, a reinforcing cold front that will bring another shot of very pleasant air across much of the northern half of the country, from the Dakotas to the Midwest to New England eventually, starting Sunday and into early next week. Here's the upper level pattern, and what you're going to be seeing here with this darker red shade, that's kind of your heat dome that we've had to be dealing with over much of the country here. But by Wednesday, you can definitely see that that heat dome is retreating quite a bit, and we're starting to see a trough that's now digging into Canada. That trough then eventually is going to help usher in the cooler air for the eastern half of the country. This is by Saturday, and you can see really digging in by Sunday, where we're going to be talking about high temperatures by Sunday, and certainly for the early portions of next week, maybe running about 10 degrees below average for this time of year for the eastern portions of the country. Again, these are the anomalies for temperatures where we're running a little bit warm through the midweek. By Wednesday afternoon across the Great Lakes, we go back to below average by a couple of degrees. It's not going to be a real big chill. I think we're riding kind of close to average, maybe a degree or two below through the end of the week, Thursday into Friday, before we kind of briefly get to average to start off the weekend and then look at the significant decline of around 10 degrees below average over much of the Great Lakes, a good chunk of the Midwest, the northern and central plains, really a nice cool spell across the heart of the country. The hottest spots will end up being in the Pacific Northwest, where areas around Washington, Oregon, and much of California are probably going to be about 5 to 10 degrees above average heading into Monday of next week. If you want to go a little bit deeper, some of the ensembles are absolutely keeping with this cooler trend. Tuesday, Wednesday, into Thursday starts to weaken a little bit, but the eastern half of the country really kind of embracing this pattern flip before we kind of moderate the temperatures, maybe just in time for Labor Day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. It looks like much of the country is going to be running right at or slightly above average as we open up the month of September. Thanks for watching the weather forecast here for today. We always appreciate your feedback. Send me a comment, a like, and even a subscribe if you like the content. We'll have much more coming up later on into the week. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon, and God bless.